I'm Elise Monroe, captain in the U.S. Army's logistics branch and founder of Sentinel Advisory Group. Most people don't realize that my day starts with PT at 5:30, a briefing call with my team at 6:15, and then a spreadsheet marathon for 3 struggling veteran-owned businesses before I even get to my own breakfast. My life is split between military precision and business triage. I'm proud of both. What I'm not proud of is how my husband's family treats me. Bradley Whitmore, my husband, is the kind of man who thinks private equity makes him a builder even though he's never built anything real. He's the deputy director at Hartford Equity Partners, a Chicago investment fund that likes glossy brochures and aggressive deal memos. His mother, Marjorie, runs her social life like a small monarchy from her Gold Coast townhouse. She never lets me forget that she allowed me into the family. His younger sister, Cynthia, is engaged to Travis Lowell, a fintech CEO whose company LedgerPay is everywhere in the business pages but nowhere in real banking circles. When I met Bradley, I was back from my second deployment, leaner, quieter, and more determined than ever to use my logistics skills in the civilian world. He loved telling people he was marrying an Army officer. It made him look patriotic at fundraisers. Marjorie smiled for the photos but called me our little soldier when she thought I couldn't hear. Over time, the novelty wore off. My rank became a prop instead of a point of respect. Sentinel Advisory started at my dining room table with a used laptop, a phone, and a list of veteran-owned restaurants about to go under. I'm good at cutting waste, renegotiating contracts, and teaching owners how to read their own numbers. In 3 years, I grew it into a $1 million firm with a small team of other veterans. But, to the Whitmores, it's still Elise's side project. At family dinners, Bradley's colleagues ask about his deals, while Marjorie leans over to tell me the lemon tart is slightly overbaked. 2 months ago, Cynthia's engagement invitations went out. The event, a black tie affair at Magnolia Pavilion, one of Chicago's most expensive venues. The guest list, 300 of the city's elite. The goal, according to Marjorie, was to show Travis what real success looks like and elevate Cynthia's social standing. Bradley asked me to dress understated, so I wouldn't pull focus from the bride. He said it like I was the kind of person who would show up in sequins to upstage his sister. I wasn't surprised by their attitude anymore, but a week before the party, something new landed on my desk. One of Marjorie's assistants sent over a draft of the seating chart and name badges for me to review, since you're so organized. The file included a mock-up of my badge. In elegant script it said, Housekeeper. Not Captain Elise Monroe, not Mrs. Bradley Whitmore, just Housekeeper. At first, I thought it was a typo. Then I saw the internal notes about no chair, no plate, and staff entrance. I read it 3 times, steady breathing like I was back on the range. This wasn't a mistake. It was a plan. They wanted to humiliate me in front of their guests. Marjorie had once called my firm maid service for dying businesses. Apparently, she decided to make it literal. That night, Bradley came home late, smelling of expensive whiskey and the same perfume I'd noticed on his collar 2 Fridays in a row. While he showered, I sat in my home office, scanning the files I'd been building for 6 months. Bradley's expense reports, Hartford Equity's fund statements, personal charges hidden in portfolio company budgets. I'd photographed everything, encrypted it, and backed it up to a secure server. I didn't want to believe I'd use it. Marriage was supposed to mean loyalty, even when one partner was careless. But marriage to Bradley meant pressing his shirts while he planned my public takedown. I looked at the badge again. Housekeeper. The word should have stung. Instead, it felt like a trigger. I thought about the soldiers I'd moved through war zones, with how logistics wasn't just moving boxes, but moving people out of danger. How you don't wait for someone to save you. You plan your own exit and take your team with you. I wasn't just a wife anymore. I was a commanding officer in a personal war I hadn't asked for, but couldn't avoid. Marjorie's Thursday dinners kept going. She posted photos of floral arrangements for the engagement party and tagged every major donor in Chicago. Cynthia sent me a polite text reminding me of the dress code. Bradley left another spreadsheet of his urgent personal bills on my desk. Outwardly, nothing had changed. Inwardly, everything had. During one of those dinners, Marjorie mentioned that Magnolia Pavilion had just upgraded its marble floors. She said it like a threat, as if the venue's luxury would amplify my smallness. I smiled and passed the salt. She didn't know I'd already started looking at the pavilion's financial statements through public records. They were losing money fast. Bad management, bad contracts, and a mortgage about to reset at a higher rate. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. Every morning before sunrise, I ran 5 miles, reviewed Sentinel's client files, and updated a folder on my laptop labeled Operation Sentinel. It contained timelines, evidence, and contingency plans. James Fitzgerald, my IT specialist and fellow veteran, handled digital security. Linda Prescott, a former JAG lawyer, quietly reviewed the documents. Neither of them asked questions they didn't need answers to. Veterans know how to follow a plan without grand speeches. Bradley thought I was busy with my little firm. Marjorie thought I was polishing Cynthia's silver for the party. Cynthia thought I was just another prop in her photo spread. They were all wrong. On the Thursday before the engagement party, Bradley tossed a cream-colored invitation on the counter addressed only to him. "Mom probably forgot to put your name on it," he said without looking up from his phone. Sarcasm dripped from his voice when he added, "You'll still be there, right?" I asked if I should RSVP for both of us. "Obviously," he said. "Just wear something understated." I nodded and went back to my office. The badge mock-up was still on my desk. Housekeeper. Underneath it, I wrote a single note in black ink. Captain Monroe. Then I closed the folder and opened another labeled SEC. The whistleblower portal was already bookmarked. By the time Bradley came upstairs to bed, I'd finished a revised operations plan and a schedule for the next 72 hours. It wasn't dramatic, it was just logistics assets, timing, and execution. In the Army, you learn that planning isn't glamorous. It's survival. This wasn't about a dress code or a seating chart anymore. It was about dignity. I shut my laptop, turned off the light, and lay awake next to a man who had no idea his public spectacle was about to become his own undoing. Outside our window, Chicago's skyline glowed like it always does, but for the first time since marrying into the Whitmore family, I felt completely clear. I wasn't waiting for respect. I was preparing for impact. The alarm buzzed at 4:55 a.m., but I was already awake, staring at the ceiling and mentally running through my schedule. I rolled out of bed, laced my running shoes, and hit the street before the sun came up. The cold air bit my cheeks as I logged 5 steady miles. Each step loosened the knot of anger I'd carried since seeing that housekeeper badge. By the time I got back to our townhouse, I was calmer but sharper. The way you feel before a briefing you know will change everything. Inside, the kitchen smelled of coffee. I poured a cup, black, no sugar, and opened my laptop at the dining table. Sentinel Advisory's dashboard lit up with 3 priority alerts. A veteran-owned diner in Joliet losing $8,000 a week, a machine shop in Peoria behind on payroll taxes, and a small delivery outfit in Gary being squeezed by a predatory lender. These weren't numbers on a screen to me. They were families who'd taken the same oath I had, now trying to keep their businesses alive. I fired off quick instructions to my team, then opened the encrypted drive labeled Operation Sentinel. 6 months of Bradley's spending habits stared back at me. Ski trips billed to Hartford Equity as client development, a $12,000 jewelry purchase hidden under portfolio retention, and a suspicious wire transfer to an LLC connected to Travis Lowell. I tagged each entry with case numbers like I was prepping an evidence board. The front door opened. Bradley strolled in wearing workout clothes that looked barely used. He glanced at my laptop. "Still playing soldier?" he said, reaching into the fridge for coconut water. I didn't answer. He thrived on getting a reaction. Instead, I asked him what time we were supposed to leave for Marjorie's dinner tonight. 7 sharp, he said. "And don't bring up your little firm. Mom's got donors there." At 7 on the dot, we arrived at Marjorie's Gold Coast townhouse, a 3-story shrine to old money and new credit. The dining room was staged like a magazine spread. Crystal stemware, white orchids, and place cards written in calligraphy. I'd baked my usual lemon tart because Marjorie liked to show off that the captain can bake. Marjorie greeted us at the door in a cream silk dress and a smile that didn't touch her eyes. "Elise," she said, air kissing me. "Try to be discreet tonight. We have important guests." I hung my coat and followed her into the dining room. Bradley peeled off to shake hands with a hedge fund manager. Cynthia floated in wearing a dress that probably cost more than my first car. She launched into an enthusiastic rundown of her engagement party plans. 3 signature cocktails, a string quartet, and a dessert bar flown in from New York. She didn't mention me once. When I asked about the guest list, she said, "Oh, everyone who matters. Travis's investors, Mom's board friends, the mayor's wife," then trailed off as if remembering I wasn't supposed to be there. Dinner began with small talk about stocks and charity galas. When someone asked about my work, Marjorie cut in smoothly. "Elise keeps busy with her little consulting project. She's very good with spreadsheets." A polite chuckle rippled around the table. I smiled, slicing my steak with military precision. Halfway through dessert, Cynthia leaned toward Bradley and whispered something. He smirked. Marjorie caught my eye and said loudly, "Remember to enter through the side door at the pavilion. The staff entrance is faster." A few guests looked confused. She added, "Oh, it's just logistics." I sipped my water, counting to 3. Later, while the others lingered over after-dinner drinks, I excused myself to take a call and slipped upstairs to Marjorie's study. Her laptop was open, email inbox glowing. One subject line caught my eye. Engagement event staffing plan. I didn't open it, no need to risk crossing a legal line, but the preview text was enough. Ensure badge reads Housekeeper. New chair, new plate, maximum visibility. My phone buzzed in my pocket. An anonymous email had arrived with 3 JPEGs attached. I opened them in the hallway. Photos of Bradley at the Palmer House Hotel with a woman I recognized from Hartford Equity's website. Different dates, same room, same champagne. I saved the images to my secure folder without expression. When I came back downstairs, Bradley was laughing at a joke Marjorie had made about people who mistake hustle for success. Cynthia was showing off her engagement ring to a guest from LedgerPay's board. I took my seat, folded my napkin, and mentally added Palmer House photos to my operation file. The next morning, I briefed my team at Sentinel, as if nothing unusual had happened. We reviewed vendor contracts for a struggling diner, prepped a payroll rescue for the machine shop, and scheduled a call with a banker who owed me a favor. After the meeting, James Fitzgerald lingered on the line. "You're loading a lot onto this project," he said carefully. "Just make sure your flanks are covered." I told him I was fine. He didn't press. Veterans recognize the sound of someone gearing up for a fight. By mid-afternoon, another file landed in my inbox, public records, showing Magnolia Pavilion's debt obligations. They were bleeding cash, paying premium interest, and behind on property taxes. If I wanted, I could buy the mortgage note at a discount. I bookmarked the page and closed the browser. Not yet. That evening, Bradley came home early, uncharacteristically cheerful. "Mom wants you to confirm your dress for the party," he said, loosening his tie. "Nothing flashy. It's Cynthia's day." He kissed my cheek like a man distracted by his phone. I asked him about his Friday meetings at the Palmer House. He blinked once, then said, "Portfolio company emergencies. You wouldn't understand." I smiled faintly. "Try me." He rolled his eyes and went upstairs. I stayed at the kitchen counter, sipping tea and scrolling through the evidence on my laptop. Each document was another brick in a wall I hadn't planned to build, but couldn't ignore. Expenses, transfers, photos, offshore accounts. Even Travis Lowell's glossy startup had red flags, user growth too perfect, banking partnerships that didn't exist. Cynthia had no idea. At 5 the next morning, I was back on the road, running faster than usual. The city was quiet, streets damp from overnight rain. My breath came out in steady clouds, planning and endurance. That's what logistics teaches you. You move the pieces, you hold the line, and you don't announce your plan until it's already in motion. Back at home, Bradley was still asleep. I showered, dressed, and sat at my desk with a legal pad. At the top, I wrote, 72-hour timeline. Underneath, I listed tasks in neat columns, final evidence review, encrypted backups, Linda's legal triggers, James's security protocols, travel arrangements for one key witness. It wasn't dramatic. It was procedure. Sentinel Advisory's phone rang. It was Tony Romano from the diner we were saving. His voice cracked as he thanked me for finding a way to keep his employees through the winter. "My dad would have been proud," he said. I told him it was just numbers and discipline. But after we hung up, I sat for a moment staring at the Housekeeper badge mock-up pinned to my corkboard. Numbers and discipline were all that stood between me and a very public humiliation. I opened a fresh document labeled Engagement Party Field Plan and began typing like I was drafting an op order. Location, time, known threats, contingency actions. Under objective, I wrote a single word: dignity. In the background, Bradley's alarm went off upstairs. He'd roll out of bed, shower, and head to his partner meeting as usual. Marjorie would call with another reminder about the seating plan. Cynthia would post another photo of floral centerpieces. Outwardly, nothing had changed. Inwardly, everything was moving into place. I held my coffee mug with both hands, the warmth steadying me as I watched the morning news crawl about corporate fraud cases. My phone buzzed with a calendar reminder for another Whitmore family planning meeting at Marjorie's townhouse. I almost laughed at the wording. Family planning, like a military op, but with floral centerpieces. I closed my laptop, slipped my notes into a plain folder, and left the house without telling Bradley where I was going. The townhouse was already crowded with caterers and event planners buzzing around like drones. Marjorie's living room smelled of fresh paint and expensive candles. She waved me in with a manicured hand. "Elise, sit down. We're finalizing the engagement party details. Try to keep up." I took a seat on the edge of the sofa, legs crossed, notepad ready. Cynthia perched next to her mother in an ivory blazer, scrolling through her phone. "The guest list's locked," she said. 300 RSVPs confirmed. Travis wants a big splash. Marjorie snapped her fingers at an assistant to bring her tea. "We're aiming for timeless elegance," she said. "No hiccups, no surprises." Then, turning to me, "Elise, can you coordinate parking for the staff shuttles? You're good at logistics." The room chuckled softly. I wrote a note in my pad, but not the one she thought. "Sure," I said evenly. The meeting dragged on. Security protocols, wine pairings, a last-minute addition of a celebrity DJ. When Marjorie asked about seating for the help, the planner replied, "They'll have a holding area behind the ballroom." Marjorie smiled. "Perfect. Out of sight, out of mind." Cynthia leaned in, showing her mother a new Instagram post of the venue. "Look, Magnolia Pavilion's adding a rooftop lounge just in time." She said it like a child showing off a prize. I glanced at the screen. Behind the filtered photo and hashtags, I saw detailed scaffolding, unfinished railings, permit numbers that told me construction was over budget and behind schedule. Another weakness in the pavilion's books. When the meeting ended, Marjorie handed me a cream folder labeled Vendor Coordination. "Make yourself useful," she said. I smiled politely, took it, and walked out. In the car, I opened the folder. Inside was a printed schedule, contact list, and something else, a revised badge template for staff support at the engagement party. My name, spelled correctly, under the word Housekeeper, in all caps. I stared at it until the paper blurred. I drove straight to Sentinel's office instead of home. Linda Prescott was already there, reading a case file. "You look like you've been asked to clean latrines," she said without looking up. I slid the badge template across her desk. She read it once and exhaled through her nose. "That's not an accident," she said. "No?" I agreed. "Then you know what to do." I nodded. She didn't lecture me. We'd both been in situations where humiliation was used as leverage. In the army, it breaks weak soldiers. In civilian life, it's supposed to break people quietly. But if you've been trained to see patterns, it just marks the point where you stop playing along. We spent the next hour updating the operation plan. Linda highlighted dates, cross-referenced SEC filing windows, and underlined the sections about Marjorie's offshore accounts. James Fitzgerald patched in on video, confirming that all our encrypted backups were intact, and the digital triggers were ready. No one said the word revenge. It was just procedure. After lunch, I went back to my home office to check on Sentinel's clients. The machine shop in Peoria had signed the refinancing paperwork. The diner in Joliet was back in the black for the week. Small victories, but each one reminded me why I built the company. They also reminded me that being underestimated had an upside. You could work without interference until it was too late for your opponent to stop you. Bradley came home early that day, humming to himself as he poured a drink. "Mom says the pavilion's going to be amazing," he said. "Don't screw it up." "I wasn't planning to," I said. He smirked. "Wear something simple. Cynthia's the star." I looked at him over the rim of my glass. "I'm sure she'll shine." He wandered off to his study, phone glued to his ear. I opened my secure drive and added a new folder titled Engagement Party Intel. Into it, I dropped photos of the badge, notes from the meeting, and screenshots of Magnolia Pavilion's overdue tax bills. Then I picked up my pen and drew a line from one point to another on my paper plan, the way you draw supply routes on a map. The next morning, I met James at a diner off I-55. We sat in a booth in the back, both of us in plain clothes. "Everything's clean," he said. "Your server's locked down tighter than DoD." "Good," I said. He pushed a flash drive across the table. "Worst case scenario, that's everything." I slipped it into my bag. "Thanks. Don't thank me yet." Back at Sentinel, Linda called with an update on the SEC portal. She'd run a test submission with dummy data. The system accepted it instantly. "When you're ready, it's 2 clicks," she said. I hung up and stared at the corkboard in my office. On it, side by side, were 2 badges, my Army name tape, Monroe, and the mock-up, Housekeeper. One earned, one assigned. One symbol of service, one of contempt. Together they told the whole story. The rest of the week moved like a drill. Client calls, evidence uploads, coded texts to Linda. On Thursday evening, Bradley breezed in with a shopping bag and tossed it on the bed. "Wear this to the party," he said. Inside was a plain navy dress, expensive, bland, deliberately unremarkable. I held it up. "Very tasteful." "Don't be sarcastic," he said. "Cynthia's big day is stressful enough." "Of course," I said. He left for another meeting. I hung the dress in my closet and shut the door. Late that night, I sat at my desk with the lights off, watching the city from my window. I drafted one more document, a simple checklist with 2 columns, what they plan and what I control. Under they plan, I wrote, badge, no chair, no plate, public humiliation. Under I control, I wrote, evidence, timing, exit. I folded the paper, slipped it into my bag, and shut down my laptop. There was nothing dramatic about it, just logistics, like always. Move supplies, move people, move yourself. I left the townhouse that morning with the badge template still in my bag and drove straight to a quiet office space we rented under a generic LLC name. The blinds were drawn, the furniture plain, and the walls lined with whiteboards. Linda Prescott was already inside, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, papers spread across the table. She looked like what she was, a former JAG officer who'd spent a decade prosecuting fraud before leaving government. She didn't waste time. "I've cross-checked the offshore accounts," she said, pointing at a spreadsheet. "Marjorie's got 3 shells feeding into a trust in the Caymans. Bradley's routing business development reimbursements through 2 of them. If we can show commingling of investor funds, SEC will freeze first, ask questions later." I sat down, pulled out my laptop, and opened my encrypted folder. LedgerPay? Linda flipped to another tab. Inflated user data, false partnership claims, funneling investor cash into side ventures, controlled by Travis Lowell. Classic pump and dump, disguised as fintech innovation. James Fitzgerald patched in on video, wearing a hoodie, and the same calm expression he'd had when we shared a tent in Kandahar. "Your digital package is clean," he said. "Metadata scrubbed, timestamps verified. If you hit submit, it's bulletproof." I nodded. "Good." Linda leaned back. "You sure you're ready for this?" "Yes," I said. "I'm done playing nice." We worked through the morning like an operations cell, assigning tasks, confirming sources, laying out timelines. Linda drafted the SEC complaint with attachments, I organized the exhibits, and James prepped the digital triggers. Each piece had a code name. We spoke in short, clipped sentences, no wasted words. By noon, we'd built a war plan that would make any Battalion S3 proud. Phase 1, evidence submission and media leak. Phase 2, freeze accounts and restrict asset transfers. Phase 3, acquisition of Magnolia Pavilion through a front entity tied to Sentinel Advisory. Phase 4, public announcement of the pavilion's new mission as a veteran community center. Linda slid a final page across the table. "This is the trigger schedule. Once you start, you can't pause it. SEC will move within weeks. Hartford Equity's compliance team will panic. LedgerPay's board will call emergency meetings. You'll be on the record." "I know," I said. James added, "And Bradley will know exactly who did it." "I'm counting on that." We paused long enough for lunch black coffee for me, A turkey sandwich for Linda, nothing for James except a bottle of water. It felt like a deployment briefing, but with better lighting. When we'd finished, Linda closed her laptop. I'll handle the legal side. You handle your cover. Act normal, no dramatic exits. No hints. Let them underestimate you. I almost smiled. That's my specialty. Driving back into the city, I passed Magnolia Pavilion. The building was beautiful from the street. White columns, manicured hedges, banners advertising Chicago's premier event destination. But up close, I could see cracks in the stucco, weeds in the planters, scaffolding on the rooftop lounge Cynthia had bragged about. The mortgage filings in my glove box told the real story. Debt, liens, and an owner desperate for cash. I parked a block away and walked the perimeter like I was inspecting a supply depot. Security cameras pointed outward but left blind spots near the service entrance. Staff deliveries came in through a narrow alley where no one paid attention. Good to know. I wasn't planning anything theatrical, I just liked to know my terrain. Back at home, Bradley was in his study on a speakerphone call. No, move it to the Cayman account, he was saying. No paper trail. He didn't even lower his voice. I walked past the door, silent. In the kitchen, my phone buzzed with a text from Linda. Draft ready. Just say when. I typed back, stand by. Then I made a pot of coffee and sat at the counter with a yellow legal pad. At the top I wrote, Operation Sentinel, pre-execution checklist. Underneath, line by line, I listed tasks. Final evidence review, secure witness statements, confirm pavilion mortgage purchase, prep Sentinel press release. Bradley wandered in, loosening his tie. You're quiet, he said. Just tired, I replied. He opened the fridge. Mom says you're handling the staff logistics for the party. Good. Don't mess it up. I won't. He poured himself sparkling water and smirked. Try not to look too military. It's a social event, not a briefing. I missed in. I sipped my coffee and said nothing. That night, after Bradley went to sleep, I sat at my desk, the room dark except for my monitor. I opened the SEC portal Linda had bookmarked. The cursor blinked in the Upload Attachments box. 1 click, and 6 months of evidence would be in federal hands. Not yet. Timing mattered. The engagement party was my LZ. I wanted maximum visibility. I closed the window and pulled out the badge mock-up from my drawer. Housekeeper. The word no longer made me angry, it made me focused. I clipped it to my corkboard next to my army ribbons. Side by side, they looked like a before and after photo of a life. The next morning, I drove to Joliet to check on the diner we were saving. Tony Romano greeted me at the door, apron-stained but smile wide. You're a lifesaver, Captain, he said. Payroll cleared. Lender backed off. My guys can breathe. I shook his hand. You did the work. I just showed you the numbers. On the drive back, I thought about how many times veterans had been written off, underestimated, and quietly rebuilt their lives anyway. It was the same skill set I was about to use on my own situation. Logistics, patience, and a refusal to be humiliated into silence. That evening, Linda called again. Everything's set. Mortgage purchase papers are ready under the front entity. Once you wire the deposit, the pavilion's yours in 30 days. You want me to execute now? Wait until after the party, I said. Understood. We hung up. I stood at the window of my office watching the city lights flicker. Somewhere out there, Marjorie was picking out centerpieces and Cynthia was practicing her smile for the cameras. Bradley was probably at the Palmer house again. They were all confident, all sure of their positions. I turned back to my desk, picked up a pen, and signed the last internal memo authorizing Sentinel's legal retainer for Linda. Then I checked my phone for James's daily security update. All green, it read. I shut off the lamp and let the room go dark. In the quiet, I could hear my own breathing steady and slow. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't angry. I was ready. I stood at my bedroom mirror fastening my army dress jacket. The fabric pressed so sharply you could cut paper on it. The silver captain's bars glinted under the light. In my other hand, the housekeeper badge lay face, up on the dresser. 2 labels for the same person, depending on who was handing it out. I pinned my nameplate straight and took one last look, not for vanity, but for alignment. Years of uniform inspections had hardwired me to check every detail before stepping into a fight. On the desk behind me, my phone buzzed once. James. Secure link active. I tapped the screen and a live feed of our encrypted storage appeared, folders named Indexed Ready. Beside that sat a sealed envelope addressed to Linda, a paper copy of every exhibit we'd prepared. If the servers crashed or my phone was seized, the evidence still existed. I picked up the badge again, turned it over slowly. The script was elegant, the kind you'd order from a print shop that caters to high-end events. They hadn't even tried to hide the cruelty. That detail told me more than their words ever could. This wasn't an accident. This was design. Downstairs, the kitchen clock ticked past midnight. Bradley had texted hours earlier. "Client drinks running late. Don't wait up." I hadn't replied. He was probably at the Palmer house with Rebecca, acting like his life was untouchable. I opened the fridge, poured a small glass of orange juice, and sat at the table. The house was silent except for the faint hum of the HVAC. I took out my notebook and wrote a final checklist for Operation Sentinel. Evidence packages ready. SEC submission ready. Mortgage wire ready. Security measures ready. Witness affidavits ready. Underlined twice. James sent another message. "All systems green. Standing by." I typed back, "Execute on signal." No code words tonight, just direct orders. Upstairs again, I opened my jewelry box. Inside, the wedding ring Bradley had picked himself to impress his partners, not me. 2 carats, flawless cut, more a business expense than a token of love. I slipped it off and set it next to the badge. For 5 years I'd never taken it off except for PT. Tonight it felt like a loose part from an old machine. My uniform jacket still smelled faintly of CLP oil from the last inspection. That smell always steadied me before a mission. I folded the jacket carefully and replaced it with a black dress, simple, understated, the one I'd chosen for the engagement party. It wasn't a statement piece. It was armor disguised as civility. I laid out my purse, wallet, keys, phone, and a slim flash drive disguised as a lipstick tube. Inside it, the mirrored backup of everything: financial records, screenshots, audio clips, security footage, and the signed affidavits from the vendors Bradley and Marjorie had stiffed. The mirror showed a different version of me, now hair smooth, makeup applied with precision, expression unreadable. It wasn't beauty prep. It was camouflage. I rehearsed the entry in my mind, walk up to the check-in desk, accept whatever they hand me, hold posture, and control my breathing. Nothing in my face could hint at the trigger I was about to pull on their empire. On the nightstand, a framed photo from Kandahar stared back. Me and 3 other soldiers crammed into a tent, smiling despite dust and exhaustion. Those were the people who taught me discipline, patience, and how to keep a plan running under fire. They weren't family by blood, but they'd never humiliated me for sport. I picked up the frame, studied it for a moment, and set it gently back down. In the hallway, the air felt cooler. I walked into Bradley's office. The desk was a mess of contracts and half-open folders. One sheet lay on top, a list of guest placement adjustments for the engagement party. Next to my name, staff divided by support. They'd printed it out. No shame, no second thoughts. I took out my phone and snapped a photo, then replaced the paper exactly as it was. No evidence disturbed. On my way out, I paused by the liquor cabinet. Bradley's favorite scotch sat half empty. For a split second, I imagined pouring it down the drain. Instead, I closed the cabinet. Wasting good whiskey would be petty. The real punishment was already set in motion. Back in the kitchen, I scribbled one last note for myself on a sticky pad. Stay composed, do not react. Let them show themselves. I stuck it to the inside of my purse where only I would see it. At 2 a.m., my phone vibrated again. Linda this time. Everything filed for pre-clearance. We're good to go. Sleep if you can. I texted back. Copy. Sleep wasn't happening. Instead, I walked through the house, switching off lights. Each room a reminder of a performance I'd been playing for 5 years. Perfect wife, perfect daughter-in-law, perfect help. The kitchen spotless, the living room staged, the guest bathroom stocked with scented towels Marjorie had picked. All of it part of a facade that would crumble by morning. I reached my office, closed the door, and pulled the blinds. On the desk sat a black notebook labeled Sentinel. Inside were notes on every business we'd saved, every veteran we'd hired, every community grant we'd funded. My real work, the one Bradley called your little project, I flipped through the pages slowly. Names, numbers, stories of restaurants, factories, and small shops that still existed because of me. Proof that competence matters more than lineage. The glow from my monitor lit the badge on the corkboard. Housekeeper, captain, consultant. Whatever label they tried to stick on me, tomorrow I'd still be the one who planned, executed, and survived. I leaned back, exhaled slowly, and reached for my phone again. Another message from James popped up. Remember, timing is everything. Don't let them see you sweat. I smiled faintly. Copy, I wrote. Downstairs, the heating system clicked off, leaving the house perfectly quiet. I could hear the faint rumble of traffic from Lakeshore Drive. Outside, the city went on as usual. Inside, every detail was lined up like gear in a supply convoy. I placed the flash drive, the envelope, and the badge into my purse. Then I set the wedding ring on top, watching it catch the faint light. It was just metal and stone now, not a promise. Standing at the window, I could see the skyline glowing against the dark. Tomorrow there would be no surprises, only execution. Not the dramatic kind, the military kind. Clean, precise, and final. I closed the blinds, switched off the lamp, and walked down the hallway, my heels making soft clicks on the hardwood floor. Each step was measured, not theatrical. In the doorway to our bedroom, I paused, looking at the empty side of the bed where Bradley should have been. The sheets were perfectly flat. He wouldn't be home until dawn, if at all. I slid under the covers fully dressed, phone in hand, purse within reach. My breathing slowed as my mind ran through the plan once more, like a pre-mission checklist before boarding a flight. No drama. No second guessing. In the stillness of the room, the housekeeper badge inside my purse felt heavier than its weight. Not a label. A trigger. The chill hit my face as I stepped out of the car at Magnolia Pavilion. The early fall air crisp enough to sting but not enough to show breath. The valet handed me a ticket without eye contact. Around me, high-end cars slid up to the entrance. Bentleys, Teslas, a vintage Rolls with a custom plate that screamed old money. The building's white columns glowed under soft spotlights, banners proclaiming Chicago's premier event destination, fluttering slightly in the breeze. Inside the lobby, everything smelled of polished marble and expensive perfume. A string quartet played near the staircase, the notes floating over low conversation and the click of heels on stone. I walked past clusters of Bradley's partners in tailored suits. Their voices dropped as I passed, not out of respect but curiosity. "That's her," one man said just loud enough. "The one who runs that little veteran business or whatever. Bradley's charity case." Another chuckled. I kept my stride steady, heels clicking like a metronome. Years of marching on uneven terrain made balancing on marble in stilettos seem trivial. At the check-in desk, a young woman in pearls flipped through a stack of name badges. "Name?" she asked brightly. "Elise Monroe." Her smile faltered. She flipped through again, then once more, slower. Pink crept up her neck. She ducked under the table and came up with a single badge separated from the rest. She handed it to me without meeting my eyes. It read, "Elise, Housekeeper," in elegant script. A champagne-colored Chanel suit appeared at my side, Marjorie's perfume arriving a split second before her voice. "Oh, Elise," she said loud enough for the lobby to hear. "Thank you for helping tonight. Staff entrance is around back." Conversations stopped. Hedge fund managers turned from their whiskey. Socialites froze mid-smile. I clipped the badge to my dress with hands that didn't shake. "This works fine," I said evenly. Marjorie tilted her head, the picture of practiced sympathy. "Try not to stand too close to the head table. It confuses the servers." I walked past her without replying, straight into the ballroom. Table 3 sat near the front, arranged with surgical precision. 7 chairs for 8 place settings, the empty space glaring like a neon sign. Even the floral arrangement had been shifted to highlight the gap. Guests whispered, "Isn't that the one who saved Whitmore Logistics? Apparently she's staff now. Take a picture." I stood beside the empty chair space, reading the room like a battlefield map. Marjorie's friends eyed me with a mix of curiosity and satisfaction. The mayor's wife actually gasped. A federal judge's husband texted someone. Bradley arrived 40 minutes later, jacket off, tie loosened, the smell of Chanel No. 5 clinging to him like evidence. Lipstick traces at his collar matched the coral shade Rebecca wore to every company event. He saw me, saw the badge, saw his mother's satisfied smile, saw his partners watching. He laughed, not nervous, not uncomfortable, amused. "Relax, Elise," he said, sliding into his chair. "Food is for family. 5 years of marriage, 3 years of saving businesses, 18 months ago saving his father's manufacturing legacy, and I wasn't family enough for a chair or a plate." The clarity that hit wasn't slow, it was instantaneous. I reached for my wedding ring, the 2-carat diamond he'd chosen to impress clients rather than me. Warm from my skin, familiar from never taking it off. I pulled it off with deliberate slowness, letting the overhead lights catch each facet. Conversation stopped. Someone set down a fork mid-bite. I placed the ring on the white tablecloth with a precision that made the soft click echo louder than expected. "Then I'm no longer yours," I said, my voice clear and carrying. Bradley's laugh died. His face flickered confusion, embarrassment, then the realization that this wasn't theater. His wife had just removed her wedding ring in front of 300 members of Chicago's financial elite. The woman he labeled the housekeeper had just quit her position. I turned and walked toward the exit, my heels marking each step against the marble. Behind me, chairs scraped, voices rose, Marjorie's sharp, "Bradley, do something." I didn't turn. 300 people would remember this night, would tell the story at other parties, would wonder what kind of man laughed while his wife stood without a chair. In the foyer, a waiter froze mid-step, holding a tray of champagne. I took one glass without breaking stride, handed him back the badge, and walked out under the same banners that had greeted me. Outside, the night air felt colder, but cleaner. My car waited at the curb. The valet didn't know what had just happened inside. He just handed me my keys and wished me a good evening. I slid behind the wheel, started the engine, and merged into traffic, the city lights blurring past. My hands on the steering wheel were steady, steadier than they'd been in months of pretending everything was fine. The badge sat on the passenger seat like a piece of evidence. I reached over, slipped it into my purse next to the flash drive, and pulled out my phone. James answered on the third ring. "Go," he said. No greeting. "Execute Operation Sentinel," I said. There was a pause, then his voice came back clear and professional. "Confirming execution of Operation Sentinel. Asset freeze protocols initiating now. Document preservation complete. SEC filing prepared for submission." I hung up and kept driving, heading toward the quiet streets of Lincoln Park. Houses glowed with normal Saturday night warmth. Families eating dinner, kids watching movies, couples drinking wine. No public humiliation, no housekeeper badges, no missing chairs. At a red light, my phone buzzed again. "Linda. Submission confirmed, SEC timestamp 2047, you're officially a whistleblower." I texted back a single word. "Copy." The light turned green. I pressed the accelerator, feeling the car surge forward. This wasn't escape. It was movement controlled, deliberate, and entirely mine. At home, the townhouse was dark. Bradley wouldn't be back for hours, maybe not at all. I poured myself exactly one glass of wine, set it on the counter, and opened my laptop. The SEC portal still glowed on the screen, upload complete, displayed in neat blue text. I clicked over to the mirrored folder James maintained, each file labeled, each exhibit cross-referenced. Hartford equity misallocation, LedgerPay fraudulent metrics, Marjorie's offshore accounts, Travis's side ventures, years of their arrogance compressed into megabytes. I closed the laptop gently and took a sip of wine. The taste was sharp, not sweet. I set the glass down and looked at the corkboard where my army ribbons hung. Beside them, an empty pushpin waited. Tomorrow the badge would go there. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound in the house. No dramatics, no speeches, just an officer executing a plan. I woke up before dawn, still dressed from the night before, my phone buzzing steadily on the nightstand. James had sent a string of updates, each one short and factual, like a situation report. SEC acknowledgement received. Hartford equity internal alert triggered. LedgerPay flagged for review. All critical accounts frozen by 3/17. I scrolled through them without emotion, reading them like coordinates on a map. Each message was a checkpoint on the route we had drawn months ago. Downstairs in the kitchen, I made coffee the way I always did, the routine steadying my hands. I wasn't shaking, but the muscle memory of deployment had me moving like I was prepping for a mission anyway. At 7:15, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a link. "Open this," James wrote. It was a video from Hartford Equity's internal security camera feed. Bradley at his glass-walled office, sleeves rolled up, reading something on his screen. His face shifted from confusion to panic to rage in less than a minute. He hurled his laptop against the wall, shattering it, then shouted at his assistant to get legal now. Another clip followed. 3 junior analysts in the hallway, recording him on their phones, stunned at the meltdown. James's note underneath read, "Already trending number, Whitmore meltdown." I closed the video and poured more coffee. The smell of roasted beans mixed with the quiet of the house. My mind didn't linger on Bradley's outburst. It shifted to next steps. Linda called at 8 sharp. "We're green across the board. SEC has acknowledged your submission and issued preliminary freeze orders. Hartford Equity's compliance team is scrambling. LedgerPay's board scheduled an emergency meeting for this afternoon. Marjorie's wire transfers flagged and blocked. She's going to find out soon." "Good," I said simply. "You should also know," Linda continued, "the limited partners at Hartford Equity are furious. They're leaking to the press to distance themselves from Bradley. Expect coverage by tonight." "I'll be ready," I said. I hung up, set my mug down, and opened my laptop again. Emails were already pouring in from contacts in the veteran business community, clients, colleagues, old Army friends forwarding screenshots of the meltdown, asking if I'd seen it. I ignored them all. Instead, I opened a new email addressed to 3 CEOs whose companies Sentinel Advisory had saved under contracts arranged through Hartford Equity. The subject line read, "Documentation of fund misallocation. Urgent board review recommended." I attached the exhibits and hit send. The phone rang 5 minutes later. "Elise?" Michael Chin from Pinnacle Tech whispered. "These documents, are they real? Bradley's been charging personal expenses to our operational budget?" "Every receipt is authenticated," I said. "The hotel stays you saw in Q3 were for him and Rebecca, not your staff. Check your own ledgers. You'll see the transfers." Michael swore under his breath. "Our board meets in an hour. This is going to explode. Handle it internally," I said. "I won't comment publicly." Add. By 10, Linda texted again. "Marjorie just got served by William's attorney. Cayman accounts exposed. She's furious." I typed back. Acknowledged. Then, at 11:30, my phone buzzed with a message from Cynthia, the first contact she'd initiated in months. "Can I come over?" I hesitated, then replied, "Yes." She arrived 20 minutes later, looking nothing like the polished Whitmore heir. Jeans, oversized sweatshirt, hair in a messy bun. She stood on my doorstep, twisting her engagement ring around her finger. Inside, she sat at my kitchen table, staring at the wood grain. "I don't know what's happening," she said quietly. "Travis is acting weird. LedgerPay's numbers aren't what he said. He's been pressuring me to sign things I don't understand, and Mom..." She broke off. I poured her tea and set it in front of her. "What did he want you to sign?" "A prenup, and some sort of confidentiality agreement about the company. He said it was normal, but I looked closer, and it basically gives him access to my trust fund if something happens. I asked for my own lawyer, and he got angry. I kept my expression neutral. "You should definitely have your own lawyer." She nodded, eyes filling. "You've always been the only one who treated me like a real person," she whispered. I didn't say, "I told you so." I just slid Linda's card across the table. "Call her today." Cynthia picked it up with trembling fingers. "Thank you," she said, her voice breaking. While she sipped her tea, my phone buzzed again, James, with a link to a Chicago Business Journal article. "Whitmore meltdown goes viral. Hartford Equity Co. head under federal investigation." Underneath, a grainy still of Bradley mid-shout, laptop in pieces behind him. Cynthia glanced at my screen. "Oh my God," she murmured. "That's him?" I locked the phone and set it aside. "Focus on you right now," I said. She nodded slowly. "I'm calling your lawyer as soon as I leave." When she walked out an hour later, she hugged me awkwardly. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "for everything." After the door closed, I leaned against the counter for a moment, letting the quiet settle, not satisfaction focus. One phase completed, others still moving. In my office, I opened the folder marked Magnolia Pavilion Acquisition. James had emailed final purchase terms under the shell company. All that remained was the wire transfer. The same venue where they'd tried to humiliate me would soon be mine legally, down to the last chair and chandelier. I signed the final authorization electronically, clicked Send, and watched the confirmation screen appear. Ownership transfer in progress. Then I checked my email again. 3 replies from the CEOs I'd contacted. Each one confirmed emergency board meetings, internal audits, and suspension of all dealings with Bradley pending legal review. At 2, Linda called once more. Media requests coming in for comment. I recommend no interviews yet. Agreed, I said. She added, also, the pavilion sale is moving faster than expected. Owner desperate. We may close within 2 weeks. Do it, I said. She laughed softly. You're efficient, Captain. I hung up and turned back to my corkboard. The badge still sat pinned next to my army ribbons. Underneath, I'd written in small block letters, Mission Objectives. Complete. How was so? The sun dipped lower, casting light across my desk. I opened my notebook and wrote 3 new lines. Hartford Equity Meltdown Public. Ledger Pay under investigation. Magnolia Pavilion Acquisition pending. Then I underlined them once and closed the book. My phone buzzed one last time that afternoon. James again. Security footage hit mainstream news, 50K views and climbing. Investors panicking. I typed back. Copy. Outside, traffic hummed. Inside, every phase of Operation Sentinel was running exactly as planned. The late morning sun cut across my office blinds as my phone lit up with incoming alerts. Linda's name appeared first. Bradley suspended. Her text read. Indefinite leave. Equity stake frozen. Security escort. She attached a photo forwarded by a contact at Hartford Equity. Bradley, cardboard box in hand, 2 guards flanking him, walking out of the glass tower where he'd once bragged about real business. His assistant stared at the floor rather than at him. Before I could reply, another message came through. Marjorie served second subpoena. Offshore assets frozen. Attached was a screenshot of court documents filed that morning. Then Cynthia called. Her voice was steadier than before. I ended the engagement, she said without greeting. I confronted Travis with the evidence Linda helped me review. He denied everything until I showed him the bank statements. Then he begged. I told him I'm not interested in being his lifeline when Ledger Pay crashes. Good for you, I said. I told Mom too, she added quietly. She's furious. Not at him, at me. Of course she is, I said. She called me ungrateful, said you've poisoned me against the family. But for the first time, I didn't care. That's progress, I said. I wanted to tell you first, she continued. Thank you for helping me see it. You helped yourself, I said. I just handed you the flashlight. Already. We hung up. I sat back in my chair, feeling the weight of the past week settle not like exhaustion, but like a pack you'd carried to the extraction point. James walked in a few minutes later carrying a thick file. Magnolia Pavilion purchase complete, he said simply. Signed, sealed, wired. He laid the file on my desk. It's yours now. Every chair, every chandelier. I opened the folder, scanning the documents. Mortgage assignment, deed transfer, vendor contracts. The very place they'd tried to humiliate me now sat under Sentinel Advisory's ownership. James grinned. We even got the kitchen equipment at a discount. I laughed, a short, genuine sound. Of course you did. He leaned against the doorway. They still have Serafina's Sorry, Marjorie's charity gala, booked for December. Deposit paid. She's already sent invitations. We'll honor the contract, I said, with our new policies. James raised an eyebrow. She's going to hate that. She'll adapt, I said. He nodded and left me to the paperwork. Across the city, the fallout continued. By noon, financial blogs were posting side-by-side photos of Bradley's meltdown and my SEC filings, drawing lines between them. Former employees of Hartford Equity chimed in with stories of temper tantrums and misallocated funds. Ledger Pay's investors announced an independent audit. Marjorie's social club suspended her membership pending resolution of financial matters. Linda called again in the afternoon. We've initiated clawback motions on Marjorie's divorce fraud, she said. William's attorney is salivating. She may lose the Gold Coast house within weeks. Make sure she's served at work, I said. Linda paused. Work? She'll have to get a job soon, I said flatly. She's burned through her liquid assets. That evening, I drove out to Magnolia Pavilion to walk the property as its new owner. The parking lot was mostly empty except for a catering truck. Inside, staff were setting up for a corporate dinner. They nodded politely as I passed, not recognizing me as anything but another client. The main ballroom looked different without the crowd. Daylight poured through tall windows, revealing scuffed baseboards and worn carpet hidden by dim evening lighting. I ran my hand over one of the round tables, the same shape where I'd stood without a chair. In a small office off the kitchen, the previous manager had left a folder labeled Policies. I flipped through it, seating charts, service protocols, guest distinction guidelines. One page spelled out VIP versus staff, rules in stark terms. That would be the first thing to go. Back at the front desk, I spoke with the assistant manager. Effective immediately. We're changing all name badge procedures. Just names. No titles, no designations. She blinked. Okay, that's easy. And seating. No missing chairs, no hierarchical placement for humiliation. Everyone sits. She nodded again. Understood. I walked the length of the hall, checking each corner, making mental notes of repairs. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about building a place where dignity wasn't optional. On my way out, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. He's been calling me nonstop, begging for help. I'm testifying to the SEC tomorrow. I kept records of everything. I'm sorry. How? I stared at the screen for a moment, then put the phone away. Even his mistress was jumping ship. Driving back into the city, I passed a bus stop where a woman in a nurse's uniform sat with a lunch bag. Normal life going on. No headlines, no scandals. It reminded me why I'd built Sentinel Advisory in the first place, to keep small businesses and working people afloat when the powerful tried to crush them. Back at my townhouse, the living room felt larger, as if Bradley's absence had taken up more space than his presence ever had. His suits still hung in the closet, his watches lined up on the dresser. Soon they'd be seized as fraudulently purchased assets. I poured a glass of water and sat at the dining table, flipping through the pavilion's vendor list. Local bakeries, florists, small event staff companies. I circled names of veteran-owned businesses to offer them first contracts. My laptop chimed with an email from Linda. Court-approved emergency freeze on Marjorie's trust. She's officially broke. I typed back. Noted. Then another from James. Investor calls spiking. Bradley persona non grata. Hartford Equity considering full restructuring. I closed the laptop and leaned back. This was what execution looked like, not fireworks, just systems moving as designed. The next morning, Cynthia texted again. I told Mom I'm enrolling in an MBA program. She said I'm betraying the family. I don't care. I'm doing it. I replied, Good. Proud of you. Later that day, James stopped by with updated financials. We can convert the pavilion into a profitable community space within 6 months, he said. Events, conferences, citizenship ceremonies, weddings, and with the veteran support grants, it's basically self-sustaining. Do it, I said. He looked at me for a moment. You're not even smiling. I will, I said, when it's running. That night, alone in my office, I pulled the housekeeper badge from my purse and pinned it next to my army ribbons. Then I wrote a single line under it on the corkboard. Objective: transform humiliation into justice. The room was quiet, the city outside glowing under streetlights. No dramatics. Just another day of logistics, executed cleanly. By the time the first frost hit Chicago, Magnolia Pavilion no longer looked like the same venue where I'd been humiliated. The scaffolding was gone, the hedges trimmed, the marble floors polished to a shine that matched the new brass nameplates on the front doors. Inside, the VIP versus staff policies were shredded and recycled. The first thing guests saw now was a simple welcome sign that read, "Every guest is a guest." I walked the halls with James, clipboard in hand, checking off repairs and upgrades. Security cameras repositioned? I asked. All angles covered, he replied. No blind spots, no hidden zones. Everyone visible, everyone safe. And staff uniforms? Standardized, he said. No differentials. Everyone gets the same quality gear. We passed the ballroom where crews were installing new lighting. The smell of fresh paint mixed with coffee from a brake cart. Workers chatted easily, no one glancing over their shoulder for a boss's disapproval. "This is already different," James said quietly. "That's the point," I said. Later that morning, I met with Cynthia in my office upstairs. She looked different too, hair pulled back, wearing a simple blazer over jeans. She'd enrolled in an accelerated MBA program and was interning at Sentinel Advisory 3 days a week. She handed me a folder. "Draft proposal for a Veterans Women's Grant," she said. "I think we can partner with the state on matching funds." I flipped through the pages. Her analysis was sharp, her recommendations practical. "This is good," I said. She smiled faintly. "Feels good to do something real." "I do." "It shows," I said. She sat down across from me. "I keep thinking about that night," she said. "The badge, the chair. I was so wrapped up in Mom's world I didn't see what was happening. I'm sorry." "You're here now," I said simply. She nodded. "I want to help you make this place a symbol of second chances." "Then start with the December gala," I said. "It's still on the books." Her eyebrows rose. "Mom's gala?" "Yes, we'll honor the contract. But under our policies?" "And..." Cynthia laughed once, surprised. "She's going to hate that." "She'll adapt," I said. "Or she won't. Either way, the event runs our way." We spent the next hour planning. Seating charts with no head table. Name badges stripped down to first and last names, nothing else. Staff meals served at the same tables as guests. The charity itself, a literacy fund for at-risk youth, would still get every dollar raised. Only the hierarchy games would disappear. That afternoon, James brought in a photographer to take promotional shots of the renovated pavilion. "We're pushing a new campaign," he explained. "Community Celebration Initiative. Weddings, graduations, citizenship ceremonies. Space for everyone, not just old money." I stood for one of the photos in front of the marble staircase, not posing, just standing the way I always did, feet planted, shoulders back. The photographer clicked once, twice, then nodded. "Got it," he said. After they left, I walked back into the ballroom alone. Sunlight streamed through the windows, catching the new brass fixtures and throwing warm light across the polished floor. It didn't feel like a place of humiliation anymore. It felt like a base being stood up after an attack, clean, orderly, ready for use. In the evening, Cynthia returned with a box of documents. "You might want to see this," she said. Inside were photos snapped by a local reporter. Marjorie working at a medical clinic reception desk in Naperville, wearing a name tag that said Sarah. The article described how she'd lost her Gold Coast mansion to court, ordered penalties, and was living in a one-bedroom apartment near the train station. I set the photos aside. "So she's finally earning an honest wage." Cynthia bit her lip. "I don't know whether to feel bad or relieved. Both can be true," I said. "But we're not in charge of her choices." "She still blames you," Cynthia said quietly. "She can blame whoever she wants," I said. "The facts don't change." We went back to reviewing grant proposals. No gloating, no speeches. Just work. By the time the December gala arrived, the pavilion was unrecognizable. Guests walked in expecting velvet ropes and reserved seating. Instead, they found round tables with name cards only, no titles. Staff greeted everyone the same way. The catering team, half veteran-owned businesses, served meals without distinction between donor and volunteer. I stayed mostly in the background, letting Cynthia handle logistics. She moved with confidence I hadn't seen in her before, giving clear instructions, adjusting details on the fly. When Marjorie arrived in a borrowed gown, she stopped short at the new setup. No head table, no VIP lounge, just a sea of equals. Cynthia walked up to her. "Welcome to Magnolia Pavilion," she said calmly. "I'll show you to your table." Marjorie's eyes flicked around, taking in the changes. "This isn't how we do it," she hissed. "It's how we do it now," Cynthia said, and guided her inside. I watched from the edge of the room as the evening unfolded. The charity still raised record donations. The crowd adapted quickly, some even commenting on how refreshing it was. Staff sat and ate with guests during breaks. The sense of entitlement drained out like stale air. When it was over, Marjorie left without speaking to me. Cynthia stayed behind to help the cleanup crew stack chairs. She looked tired but satisfied. "This is what you meant by second chances," she said softly. "Yes," I said. We stood for a moment looking over the empty room. In the quiet, the badge in my purse felt lighter than it had in months. Not a wound anymore, but a marker. Later that night, back in my office, I opened my corkboard. The badge still hung next to my Army ribbons. Beneath it, I pinned a new card printed with our pavilion mission statement. Respect for all guests. Opportunities for all staff. Second chances for everyone. I sat down at my desk and wrote a quick email to James. "Good work today. Move forward on the citizenship ceremony schedule." Then to Cynthia. "Proud of you. The grant is approved." Outside, snow had started to fall, dusting the city in white. Inside, the work continued: contracts to sign, vendors to vet, programs to plan. Not glamorous, not dramatic. Just steady, disciplined action, turning a place of public humiliation into a platform for public dignity. The pavilion smelled of fresh polish and coffee when I walked in early that morning, 1 year to the week after the engagement party. Snowmelt tracked in from guests' boots, leaving small puddles on the marble that staff mopped quickly and without fuss. A banner hung over the entryway reading, "Naturalization Ceremony for 50 Veteran Families. Welcome home." I checked my watch, then walked to the main ballroom. The setup was simple: rows of chairs, an American flag on a wooden stand, a podium borrowed from City Hall. At the back of the room, James was making sure the audio worked. He gave me a thumbs up without looking up from his laptop. Cynthia appeared at my side with a clipboard. She looked confident, no trace of the nervous young woman from a year ago. "Families are arriving," she said. "We're staggering check-in to keep it smooth." "Good," I said. "Make sure the kids get front row seats." She smiled. "Already done." Across the room, volunteers, half veterans, half local college students, handed out small flags and programs printed with the words, "Today you become citizens." No hierarchy, no reserved sections, no empty chairs. Just people, families, and a milestone. I walked the aisle quietly, checking each row, making sure the sound carried evenly, the sightlines clear. This was my element. Logistics supporting meaning. At 10, the first group of families entered. Some wore suits, others jeans, a few still in uniforms. Children clutched stuffed animals or waved flags. A woman in a wheelchair rolled forward with her teenage son pushing her. The room filled with soft chatter, then hushed as the presiding judge took the podium. He spoke briefly about service, sacrifice, and the meaning of citizenship. Then, one by one, families stood, raised their right hands, and took the oath. Voices overlapped, accents mingling. For a moment, the whole room seemed to breathe together. I watched from the side, arms crossed, feeling something steady and heavy in my chest. Not pride exactly, but a quiet sense of completion. This was what we'd planned for when we bought the pavilion. Not just events, but ceremonies of dignity. After the oath, staff rolled out trays of coffee, juice, and pastries. Volunteers served guests first, then sat down to eat with them. No lines, no separate tables. The hum of conversation rose, kids laughed. Someone played a guitar softly near the door. Cynthia came up behind me. "Press is here," she said. "Where?" "Local news, a couple of national outlets. They're setting up near the back." I glanced over. A cameraman adjusted his tripod while a reporter checked her notes. "They'll want a soundbite," I said. "They asked for you," Cynthia said. I nodded. "Tell them I'll speak after the judge finishes." When the ceremony ended, families posed for photos with their certificates. Some shook my hand, thanking me for the space. One man with a Marine Corps tattoo grinned and said, "Ma'am, this beats the DMV." I laughed and wished him congratulations. Finally, the reporter approached. "Miss Monroe," she said, "can we ask a few questions?" "Of course." We stepped aside near the windows where sunlight poured in. She clicked on a small recorder. "A year ago, this venue was in the headlines for a very different reason," she said. "Tonight it's hosting a naturalization ceremony for veterans' families. What does that mean to you personally?" I looked at the rows of chairs, the scattered crumbs of pastries, the children waving flags. "It means we did what we said we would. I said simply. We took a place built on status games and turned it into a place built on respect. Some people call this a revenge story, she said. Do you see it that way? I gave a small shrug. I see it as accountability and logistics. People who abuse power expect others to stay quiet. They count on it. When you refuse, they call it revenge. I call it responsibility. She jotted that down. And your military background, how did it shape your response? It taught me to plan, to keep my temper, to do the work before taking the shot, I said, and to make sure no one's left behind if you can help it. The reporter smiled. That's a quote. She asked a few more questions about Sentinel Advisory and our veteran programs. I answered plainly. No dramatic phrasing, no slogans. Just facts. Number of businesses saved, grants issued, people hired. When she finished, Cynthia stepped forward with a tray of coffee for the crew. Thank you for coming, she said. Her tone was calm, professional, not a hint of the nervousness she'd once shown around cameras. After they left, the ballroom emptied slowly. Volunteers stacked chairs. Kids ran in circles with their new flags. James shut down the audio system and walked over. Smooth operation, he said. Good job, I said. He glanced at the corkboard hung on the office wall nearby. We'd moved it from my townhouse to the pavilion's back office. My army ribbons, my name tape, and the housekeeper badge still hung there, but now beneath a brass plaque engraved with the pavilion's mission statement. You ever think about taking that badge down? He asked. No, I said. It's staying. Not as a wound, as a reminder. Cynthia came over, wiping her hands on a towel. Staff wants to know if we're keeping the leftover pastries for the next event or donating them. Donate them, I said. Local shelter on Halstead. On it, she said, and walked away. I stood for a moment in the middle of the ballroom, listening to the faint echo of laughter and moving chairs. 1 year ago, this was the site of public humiliation. Today, it was a space where 50 families started a new chapter with dignity. No hashtags, no speeches, no theatrics. Just work done right. Outside, the snow had stopped. The sky was bright, the kind of cold Chicago day that clears your head. I stepped out onto the steps of the pavilion, the brass nameplate catching sunlight above me. People were still taking photos on the sidewalk, families hugging their kids, waving small flags. I pulled my coat tighter and watched for a moment, then headed back inside to sign the last set of invoices. Even transformation needs paperwork. When I reached the office, Cynthia had already organized the next week's scheduled community job fair, small business workshop, another citizenship ceremony. She'd placed it neatly on my desk with a note. Everything lined up. Thanks for showing me how. I sat down, pen in hand, and signed off on each item. The sound of the pen scratching paper was steady, the same rhythm as every logistical checklist I'd ever completed. Outside the office window, the flag over the pavilion stirred slightly in the wind. Inside, the housekeeper badge hung where I could see it. Not a threat, not a joke, but proof that a label doesn't define the person wearing it. The following spring, Sentinel Advisory had grown beyond anything I'd sketched on a whiteboard. What started as one office handling a few veteran-owned businesses now had branches in 6 states, each staffed with people who knew both numbers and service. The Magnolia Pavilion had become the hub, hosting not just ceremonies but training sessions, job fairs, and small business summits. People came not to whisper about my past but to build their own futures. I arrived early one morning before a regional meeting. The sun streamed through the tall windows, casting light over a new exhibit installed near the entrance, a timeline of Sentinel Advisory's impact. Businesses saved, grants awarded, families helped. At the center hung a framed housekeeper badge next to my army ribbons under a plaque that read, "Built by veterans for everyone." Visitors stopped to look at it every day. Cynthia was already in the conference room, sleeves rolled up, laptop open. She looked like she belonged there now, calm, precise, no trace of the socialite who'd once rehearsed smiles for photographers. We've got Illinois, Indiana, and Wisconsin directors on call, she said. Kentucky and Ohio will patch in at 9. Let's start, I said, setting my coffee down. She clicked a button, and 6 faces appeared on the screen, regional leads, giving rapid-fire updates about microloans, compliance training, and partnerships with community colleges. I listened, asked questions, and made decisions in short, direct sentences. No grand speeches, just coordination, When the call ended, James came in carrying a folder. "We're cleared for federal grant expansion," he said. "It's official. We can scale nationally within the year." I opened the folder, scanned the letter from the Department of Veterans Affairs. "Good work," I said. He nodded toward the lobby where two women in Army Reserve uniforms were taking photos of the badge exhibit. "People are starting to see this place as a model," he said. "That's the idea," I replied. Later that morning, a local journalist arrived for an interview. She'd been at the naturalization ceremony months earlier and wanted a follow-up. We sat in my office, the corkboard still visible behind me. "People are calling this one of the most effective accountability stories in recent Chicago history," she said. "How do you see it now?" I took a sip of water. "I see it as proof that logistics and integrity beat arrogance, that's all." She leaned forward. "No regrets?" "No," I said plainly. "I did my job. I built a system. The rest was just consequences unfolding." She gestured to the badge on the wall. "Why keep it there?" "Because it reminds everyone walking in here, including me, that labels don't define you," I said. "They reveal the person handing them out." She smiled. "And your sister?" "She's not my enemy," I said. "She's learning. She's here 3 days a week, building programs. That's what matters." The journalist jotted notes, asked a few more procedural questions, then left. I returned to the day's work. Approving contracts for a new training center, signing off on travel for the Ohio branch, reviewing a proposal for a microloan fund aimed at spouses of deployed service members. Each item small on its own, together a system of quiet impact. At lunch, Cynthia brought in sandwiches. We ate at the conference table, papers spread between us. "I've been accepted to the MBA program full-time," she said. "Evenings and weekends. I'll still work here during the day." "That's ambitious," I said. She smiled. "You taught me how to handle ambitious." We ate in comfortable silence for a moment. Outside the window, a busload of high school students arrived for a workshop on entrepreneurship. They filed in, wide-eyed at the chandeliers and marble, but quickly relaxed when greeted by staff in plain uniforms with no titles. "You ever think about selling the pavilion?" Cynthia asked suddenly. "No," I said. "It's more than a building. It's a statement." She nodded, as if she'd expected that answer. In the afternoon, James updated me on Marjorie. She's still working at the clinic, no more offshore accounts, living on her salary. I glanced at Cynthia. She kept her eyes on her laptop. "Good," I said. "People can change if they have to." We spent the rest of the day finalizing a new policy manual for the pavilion. Simple rules: equal treatment for all guests, staff meals provided, transparent billing. Nothing flashy, just fairness, codified. As evening fell, the last of the workshop students left. The halls echoed with their voices fading. I walked back to my office, switched on the lamp, and looked at the corkboard one more time. Housekeeper badge, Army ribbons, Sentinel mission card, 3 artifacts telling one story, from military service to social justice without losing discipline. I pulled out my notebook and wrote a line at the top of a blank page. Next objective. Beneath it, I listed tasks for the upcoming quarter: expand microloan fund, host National Veteran Business Summit, develop mentorship pipeline. Each line crisp, actionable, like a supply list before a mission. Cynthia knocked on the doorframe. "We're locking up," she said. "Want me to set the alarm?" "I'll do it," I said. She gave me a quick smile. "See you tomorrow, Captain." "See you," I replied. When she left, I turned off the lamp, letting the badge catch the last glint of light from the hallway. The building was quiet now, but not empty staff, finishing up paperwork, janitors cleaning, contractors prepping for tomorrow's seminar, life moving, systems working. I walked through the empty ballroom where once I'd stood without a chair. Now rows of tables waited for tomorrow's training session. No head table, no missing chairs. Just space arranged for people to sit, learn, and build something of their own. Outside, the city hummed under streetlights. Inside, I reset the alarm, locked the door, and stepped out into the crisp evening. No drama, no speeches, just the steady rhythm of a plan executed to the end. In my car, I glanced once more at the pavilion behind me. The brass nameplate shone under the lights. A year ago, it was a stage for humiliation. Tonight, it was a working building full of purpose. The badge on my corkboard wasn't a scar. It was proof that revenge, done right, doesn't destroy. It rebuilds. I started the engine, checked my mirrors, and pulled into traffic. Another day of logistics complete. Another system standing where chaos used to be. Driving away from Magnolia Pavilion that night, I didn't feel triumphant or bitter. I felt steady. The city lights blurred on the windshield, but my thoughts stayed sharp. Everything that had happened, from the badge to the SEC filings to the citizenship ceremony, wasn't about drama. It was about refusing to be small and turning that refusal into something constructive. People still call it a revenge story. Maybe it started that way, but it didn't end there. What I built at the pavilion and through Sentinel Advisory isn't a monument to payback. It's a working system that gives veterans, families, and small businesses a fair chance. Every time a small shop survives, every time a family sits in those chairs without being labeled, every time a kid waves a flag at a naturalization ceremony, it's proof that discipline and persistence beat arrogance. Cynthia's new path, the pavilion's new policies, even Marjorie's ordinary job, they're all parts of the same shift. Labels can be handed out, chairs can be taken away, but none of that defines a person who's trained to plan, adapt, and act. I didn't just walk away empowered. I stayed, built, and multiplied that power into something bigger than me. Standing in the quiet of my office with the housekeeper badge pinned next to my army ribbons, I don't see humiliation anymore. I see a clear chain of cause and effect, a reminder of what happens when you turn discipline into justice. That's not revenge. That's leadership.